That was a
Hey,
very fast intro.
a 5-second intro, yeah.
I was caught off guard.
We're like a whole minute. I understand. Hey, remember that Dadpool stream? My ears, like, literally, I think are still ringing from that.
When I was playing the death metal, like the
The death
screamo
metal, the
music,
death metal, yeah.
it was the
Anyways,
Doomslayer music.
yeah, the Doomslayer music. Anyways, you guys are probably not wanting to listen to me and Than yap about old times and old streams and different stuff. But anyways, no, I'm with Than Christopoulos. I hope I'm saying that right. And so I should know that
Christopoulos.
because Christopoulos. Okay, I've only known you for like 5 years now. Still can't
Yeah.
pronounce your last name. It's like
Okay. Well, we're best
Paula
friends, but it's
Gugia.
okay.
Yeah, Paula Gugia. But anyway, so Than, you've recently been on Jubilee, which has had like how many views has that video had so far?
Maybe I don't know.
I know
Probably
it's like
2
over a
million
million
now.
or something. Like I
Yeah,
thought, at
dude,
least
like
it
I
was
see
crazy.
now. Come on.
But yeah, Jubilee surrounded, debating Alex O'Connor with 20 other Christians and 5 Mormons.
3.7 million.
3.7 million. So shoot. So I'm sure it's your head is grown since then, and
I'm just vibing, man.
people are coming up to you in the streets asking you for your autograph and all that other stuff. But no, for real. It was pretty interesting thing to watch. Alex O'Connor versus 25 Christians, or at least, I don't know how many Mormons are on there, how they
I
got
think
on
4.
there. 4? Okay. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of people here have seen it, have already watched it. And I hate to say it, but Alex did come out looking pretty good. I think a lot of that has to do with the format.
Yeah.
So before we get into kind of your discussion with Alex, 2 discussions, and we're going to talk about kind of what would you have said if you had a longer period of time to kind of engage with Alex and have, more sufficient time. But that kind of goes back to the format. That format was like the Mr. Beastification of religious debates. I mean,
Oh no, Eric, I'm losing you. Hold
are you
on.
seeing me? Because I'm spinning out a little bit. Is
Yeah, a
anybody
little
in the
bit.
chat if you're seeing technical issues, let me know.
You're just kind of frozen in place right now, but I can hear you.
Anybody there?
All right, you're getting better.
Okay, so you there? Can you see me now?
Yeah, I've been able to see you and hear you. It's just the video's a little glitchy.
Okay.
That's all.
Let me try something real quick. Okay. Let me try something. Sorry, guys. We're off to a roaring start here.
You see?
Okay, hold up. I'm going to switch connections real quick.
Well, while we're waiting on Eric to do that, hi everybody. I'm Than. If you don't know who I am, Eric and I are.
All right.
Whoa,
How are we
you
doing
look
now,
way
guys?
better, bro. Eric and I have been friends for a really long time, so.
All right. How are we doing now?
You look way better, and I can hear you way better.
All right. We'll go with this. So just switched connections from one internet connection to another. All right, guys. So hopefully the boomer moments are done. So anyways, we're talking about the format, or at least that's what I started to. And this format was absolutely bananas. And what I noticed about it was it's just like before you could even kind of start to begin to get a point with Alex, it's just everybody is trying to take you out. They're trying to they raise their flags, they vote you out. It's as if they think that they could do a better job. And so you're not just debating Alex, but like you're trying to make good enough points that all the Christians there are just going to somehow allow you to have their space to say what they feel like they should say. That's a lot to go up against. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
Give me your kind of thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, so I want to be careful here because the format is incredibly tough, and I knew that going into it, but it was tougher than I anticipated. That being said, I don't really want to fault Jubilee for that, and I'm not going to sit there and play like the victim over the format either, right? Like
Right.
I knew what it was going into it. And so it was hard. I knew that going into it. It's not that good of a format to get into the details because like you said, you have other people that are going to raise their flags. You have this timer right in front of you. And if Alex is in trouble, and I don't consider this like a dishonest thing or anything, right? Like this is what you're supposed to do in debate. If Alex is in trouble, he can employ a number of rhetorical tactics just to kill time and just survive until the timer goes up or you get voted out, so that way somebody else can come in, right? Add in the fact that like while you're talking to Alex, you have that timer in front of you, and in your peripherals you have these like the flags going up and everything like that too. It was rough, man. But I'm also incredibly thankful for the opportunity to go up there and talk to him. So yeah, I mean, like we can probably dig into more details there, but I'm not going to yap a bunch. At least now.
Yeah, no worries. And so it was, like I said, it was kind of like the Beastification of like debate formats. It's like, I don't know, did like one of his guys come up with this format or something? Because it was pretty weird. And I feel like almost anybody who is the 1v25, the one I feel like is almost always going to come out on top. I haven't watched a lot of these.
Yeah.
I've seen bits and pieces of like the one with Ben Shapiro and the one with I think it was Lila Rose, who's like a pro-life advocate. And I think they both did really well. But now I could think like, okay, well, I could see why they did really well. Because this format is like, has everything against the 25. And so at best, you can kind of hope that you land like a couple of punches here and there. But I don't think anybody is going to be able to knock out, throw a knockout blow in that conversation. It's just too crazy of that. But I mean, I think it's good for a lot of people involved. It gives people exposure. It gets more people talking about this topic. I mean, anytime you can go on like a platform as big as that and present these kind of things out there for discussion, and all the discussions that it's been all the spin-off discussions that have been coming from it, you have to say that like overall is a W. So
yeah, I was going to say, that's why I'm like super thankful about this, because look, man, okay, because of the format, people probably are missing the forest from the trees, especially when it comes to my discussions with Alex. And even Tim's discussion with Alex when it comes to the problem of evil, because him and I take that same approach.
Yeah.
But I mean, how many? That's 3.7 million people that at least have some sort of exposure to the maximalist case for the resurrection. 3.7 million people that probably would have never heard of the cloud rider argument for for high Christology, that got exposed to that, right? And so I'm thankful for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's just good exposure overall. It gives people an opportunity to think about these arguments. I don't think, I've seen Max Data is kind of becoming mainstream now. You got Wes Huff on Joe Rogan, you got other people kind of representing it on this whatever this debate was, this kind of crazy free-for-all thing. And so it's kind of good to see that it's becoming a little bit more injected into the mainstream, and we're going to definitely talk about that. And so I think without further ado, why don't we go ahead and we're going to just talk about the conversation that you had with Alex. We're going to play it, just kind of react to it.
The immaculate drip.
The immaculate drip there with the Hawaiian shirt and the stash. It's serious. And like the mean mug faces that you were shooting at
Man,
Alex
wait, hold on. Do I have RBF? Because like all the memes that I'm seeing about me, I look angry and like super serious. I thought like I was a happy guy.
You were just had the game face on. That's what it was.
Fair enough.
You just had the game face. You were ready. You were prepared. And so I don't know. I didn't. Maybe people might get the wrong impression, but yeah. Anyway, we'll get a bit of watch, and just stop me anytime. But I want to talk about kind of like, we could answer some of Alex's objections, like if you would have had more time, as well as just kind of talk about how the conversation went. So here we go. Right there, it's like, just step off, punk. Like, get off my. This is my chair. And he just laughs it off as he walks back, ashamed.
Okay.
How's it going? This is a really interdisciplinary question for the resurrection of Jesus. And in my experience, it kind of boils down into two categories. The
the prior probability of the resurrection of Jesus,
Kind of
and
glitchy.
the
I
data
think.
itself.
So what I'm really interested in is the historical case for the resurrection of Jesus.
Okay, I want to ask
Hold
a
on.
clarifying question
Mhm.
because I would love to talk
Can you
about
pause
the
it
data.
for a second?
But
Yeah.
if I were
I just want to make sure that the street, like the chat, can actually see it because it's a little glitchy on my end. I
Is
can
it?
hear it.
You guys,
but I
can
don't
you
know.
guys hear?
Yeah, I just want to make sure the people in the
Oh,
chat.
okay.
That's all.
I don't know what's wrong with my internet. I tested before. Everything said it was good. And then for like the last 30 minutes, it's just been wonky. I even switched.
Video's good. Video's a little jittery.
Let me turn the quality down on the video. Maybe that'll help.
If you want, I can try to screen share too on my end. And if
Yeah,
you
why
want,
don't
give me the timestamp.
yeah, it's 42.
Well, hold on,
29.
hold on.
Yep.
You're a little faster than I am.
Oh yeah. Well, fast on giving you the info, but apparently not on the internet. I'm really sorry, guys. This is Bush League. Bush League.
All right, what's the first timestamp?
About 42 like 15.
42, 15. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Let
Here, I'll
me
stop sharing.
share screen. Hold on. I don't want to do it like that. Let's do it this way. Ah. Okay. And then we will. Gosh, everything's breaking. I'm so sorry, Eric. Come here 1 sec.
Yeah. Hey. All right. Well,
Share.
thanks for coming, everybody. We'll
All right.
see you
All
on the
right.
next
I think
one.
I got it.
I'm just
You see
kidding.
this?
Yeah. There you go.
All right.
All right.
Can you hear it?
I can. Yes. I can.
Okay, cool.
All
right.
right.
You just tell me when to pause, then I'm going to follow your lead.
Okay.
Okay.
How's it going? This is a really interdisciplinary question for the
Oh, yeah.
resurrection of Jesus. And in my experience, it kind of boils down into two categories.
Mhm.
The prior probability of the resurrection of Jesus and the data itself.
So what I'm really interested in is the historical case for the resurrection of Jesus.
Okay, I want to ask a clarifying question
Mhm.
because I would love to talk about the data. But if I were to give you a model of the Gospels that I would call like the historical reportage model, which would say something along the lines of the authors of the Gospels were close to the times and places of the historical Jesus. They rooted their historical work in eyewitness testimony and did not feel the freedom to make up historical facts. Because of that, we can extract all the testimonies from these Gospels, and we have access to what the original eyewitnesses actually said and did.
Okay, so
right?
who do you think are the eyewitnesses that the testimony is being based on?
So this is where I'm not a walking encyclopedia, but I would say if you looked at all the testimonies, we have 21 unique testimonies that are going to be polymodal in nature. They're going to have semblances of independence and interdependence and some dependence because of the synoptic problem, all that stuff. If we were to get there, would that be enough for you to say the probability that the resurrection happened relative to any other countering theory is higher?
No, I don't think so.
So that tells me then that one, it could be the prior probability still. That's an issue.
Mhm.
Because if that's not enough evidence,
It's
Well,
not that. I
go
think
ahead and
that
pause it right there for a second. So, did he just tell you that even if we had the evidence, that it wouldn't Did he say
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
prior is too low that it can't be overcome with evidence?
Well, so that's my interpretation here, right? Like, look, it's not like a complete binary at the end of the day. It could be a mix of the fact that he might just think that amount of testimony is still not enough and he wants more
Right.
evidence to overcome the low prior. And it could also just be that the prior is really low. Like, you could solve that problem mathematically by addressing either side, right?
Right.
Theoretically. But the reason I asked the question the way I did is because I like even if you say no to that question, where I'm going to go is to the prior probability, because I'm not going to waste time talking about the reliability of the Gospels or anything like that. Because even if I get you there, then it's still not enough, which tells me there's underlying issues
Right.
aside from that, right?
Right. He's going to be Mahum, and
Yes.
you're going to have to address that first and talk about how actually no testimony, enough good testimony, would overcome a low prior. So, yeah, go ahead and continue.
Yeah, and you'll notice a little shift here, which I don't know if it's on purpose or not. But the shift is, I asked a conditional question, right? If historical reportage model, then you have these options, yes or no. He says no. When I try to clarify, he rejects the conditional as the reason why he would say no, even if the conditional is true, which muddies the water. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And so basically what he's doing is you're saying if we had like this reportage model and it's solid, okay, and basically reportage model, for those of you guys who don't know, is we're just saying the gospels are eyewitness reportage, right? They're based on eyewitness testimony, and they go back to what the original people who witnessed Jesus actually claimed, right? And so if they're making these claims in the context of heavy persecution, then it's unlikely that you're just making stuff up or lying, right?
Yeah.
And if they're making these the kind of claims that they're making, what we see in the gospels is they're eating broiled fish with Jesus. Jesus is inviting them to touch his wounds. They're multi-sensory appearances, and so it's extremely unlikely that the disciples can be mistaken, and it's extremely unlikely that they would be lying. And so if what we have in the gospels like adds up, is this testimony enough to overcome the low prior probability of the resurrection? And Alex basically says no, but then he's like, but your evidence for the gospels, even if I said yes, isn't going to cut it anyways, is kind of like
right. And
a
that's what he
charitable
does
interpretation of what I'm giving
here. Yeah.
Alex.
So I'll play the clip really quick so people can catch that really.
Yeah.
And then
The authors of the Gospels, specifically on the resurrection, can't be trusted to be giving an accurate account of what happened.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking if we had this historical reportage model, and that was true.
Sure, well, if it were true that they were reporting historical events, then it would be a historical event, yeah.
So let me clarify.
I don't think that they
Yeah,
are.
So yeah, what? Yeah,
Let me clarify one thing here.
yeah,
The historical reportage model does not entail what the reporting actually happened. All I'm saying is that we can extract from there is that these were the actual eyewitness testimonies to the risen Jesus.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that Jesus is...
So that's where he shifts the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because
He
again,
shifts it to-
I'm more than happy to defend the historical reportage model and the reliability of the Gospels. But in that moment, I didn't know what to do rhetorically because I'm not a rhetorician. I'm not a debater, right? At the end of the day.
You debated Dillahunty and you did pretty well, so don't sell yourself too short.
Again, I'm laying my cards on the table. I think Dillahunty was playing super nice with me rhetorically because he liked me. Like, I took a lot of big risks in that debate, like when I brought up miracles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
For context, in my Dillahunty debate, in the back of my head, when I brought up modern day miracles, I was terrified internally that he'd point to the paraplegic that was in front and center of the stage and go, "Oh, miracles happen. Pray for her right now." Like, he could have done that.
He could have. He could have put out the antifreeze like that one dude did with James Wright and Jeff Durbin a long time ago.
So I really do think Dillahunty just took it easy on me rhetorically, just to be honest. But anyway, here with Alex, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what the right rhetorical move was because substantively, we needed to talk about the prior probability, right? But that's just not where it went.
Yeah, it's like, this is where I thought it was weird though. It's like, hey, would enough testimony overcome the low probability of a miracle? And Alex is like, no, but you don't believe in Matthew zombies, do you? And it's like, bro, like, this is kind of like, I mean, I hate to say it, but this is like some low tier atheist apologetics here. And I have a lot of regard for Alex. I think Alex is a smart guy. I think he tries to, for the most part, more than any other atheist, try to steelman the other side of the debate, right? And he has on good Christian guests on his channel, and I think that he's really tried to study this topic. But just to immediately jump to like, but Matthew zombies or whatever, you know, it's just like, that just strikes me as kind of a weird move. Because anyways, go ahead and hit play because we're going to see him get into that.
Yeah. And I want to get your read on this too. Well, just tell me when to pause. I'm curious what you're thinking as it keeps going.
Yeah.
Is the only person outside of the people that Jesus and the apostles rose from the dead. Do you think that he's the only person in human history that's risen from the dead?
Yes.
Okay, wait, really quick. I do want that pause is so misunderstood.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people took that to be like a deer in headlights, like, oh my gosh, I never thought about this kind of a pause.
Yeah.
That was me thinking, where is he going to take this? Because there's like 3 different directions he could have taken it. And which answer can I give that's going to condense and waste the least amount of time? Like, that's what was going through my head. I just want to clarify that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
no,
Matthew's gospel in Matthew chapter 27 says that at the time of the death of Jesus, the graves of Jerusalem opened and the holy ones got out of their graves. And then, interestingly, says then after the resurrection, appeared to many. Many of them walked around appearing to many. Do you think that that happened?
So I would just say that if the historical reportage model is true, then yes.
So you think,
But hold on, the problem there is those are also talking about resuscitations most likely, not resurrections.
yeah, but what we're talking about here is the graves of Jerusalem opening and many people getting out of their graves, walking around Jerusalem and appearing to many
If I
people.
say yes, what's at stake
If
there?
this happened, this would be the most extraordinary event that's ever happened in human history. And yet,
And then you're going to make an
it is
argument
not
from silence
reported.
from there.
Some arguments from silence do work. It is
I
not
understand
reported.
that, but then
Hold on,
that's
hold on.
only one piece of
it's not
evidence that you're going
reported
to use.
anywhere else. It's not reported in any of the other gospels.
I
It's not in
understand.
Josephus. It's not
So
in Acts.
that's one data
It's not
point.
anywhere.
Let's just
But hold on, let me finish this thought because this is important. Most Christian scholars, I think, so people like Dale Allison, for example, believe.
Yeah,
When
see,
he brought up Allison, man, I'm like, dude, I know everything you're about to say. Can we just cut to the chase?
right. And so to me, again, this kind of goes back to what we talked about before. Like, you see the flags going up. He's trying to put you on pause. He's not giving you any opportunity to interject whatsoever. And honestly, he's just changed the subject. That's all that he's done at this point, in my opinion, is he's just changed the subject. This is a weird passage. Now I'm going to make an argument from silence because, I understand, sure, there are strong arguments from silence. There are weak arguments from silence. He thinks this is a strong one. We're going to discuss, in a moment why we might think that this is a weak one. But it's just like, this is completely changing the subject basically to just knock you out at this point. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure he can see in his peripherals the flags are going up. They're interjecting because God knows what reason. They just want to get up there or something. But it's just like, you're not getting an opportunity at this point, from my standpoint, to establish, introduce, discuss much of anything. He just basically said no testimony would overcome the low prior. But because of Matthew's weird story of the rising of the saints, I don't think that's historical. Therefore, there is no reportage model. The gospels aren't reliable. So whatever you're selling me is bunk. And I'm just like, this is really like how we're going to go about debating the resurrection. This is just so strange to me.
Yeah, it was frustrating because, again, I'm not trying to sound arrogant here, right? Either. It's just like I've heard this a million times. I knew.
Right. We've all heard this a million times.
If you pay close attention, I think you can see this happening, but like maybe the person that's not familiar with these debates, probably like to them it might look like I'm just trying to cut off Alex and interrupting him and all this other stuff. My read on the situation and how I felt in the situation was that Alex and I were just moving really fast, signposting constantly to each other, bringing up topics and moving past them super fast. Like analogously, like if you watch anime, if you if you watch like Goku and like a villain fighting at light speed, right? Like the animators just make it look like they're staying still, but really what's happening is they've exchanged like 300 blows. Like that's kind of what's happening here, just in a debate style format. At least that's how I felt in this moment. So did you want me to keep playing it, or did you want to talk about it?
Yeah, go ahead and keep playing it for now.
Okay.
That this didn't actually happen.
Well, I'm not interested in what Allison's going to say.
The door that this opens.
What I'm interested in is what the data says. If we have the historical reportage model, right?
But you keep saying we have this model. Like
that's fine. Let me give you some evidence for the historical reportage model.
Sure.
If this model is true, one of the things I would expect to see would be things like undesigned coincidences within the Gospels.
Yeah.
Tiny little interlocking.
Okay. For the sake of time, I understand what you're saying. So I think that a lot in the Gospels is historically reliable and a lot is not. Things like undesigned coincidences
So
are
you're
really
taking a pericope by pericope approach to this, or what methodology?
I'm taking a story by story. I don't think that the graves.
I don't think that's a good methodology.
I don't think that the graves of Jerusalem were opened. I don't think that there were people
that's
walking
fine.
around.
I
the city of
understand where you're
Jerusalem.
coming
but
from.
if that's the case, then that means that at least the author of Matthew is willing to invent stories.
I don't think that.
Yeah, stop. All right, so
I love how you and I both.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you talk first.
Okay, so a lot happened there again, right? Like I let Alex bring up the points, and I try to be charitable and address those points, and that's why I even asked that question of like the methodology. And maybe Alex just didn't want to go there, but I was frustrated because I brought up. I'm like, fine, let me give you some positive evidence for the historical reportage model.
He just was like, no,
That
no,
got
no, no,
hand
no, no,
waved.
no, 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 no. Yeah, total hand wave.
And then I try to bring up methodology. That gets hand waved, and he goes back to, I don't think what Matthew talks about actually happened, and I think that this is evidence that Matthew felt the freedom to make up some facts. And
Yeah,
but
like
that's
what?
the whole entire point of the reason why I brought up the historical reportage model.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. It's just like, I don't think this happened, therefore it's made up, therefore they made stuff up. It's like, oh, like if there is other evidence for the reliability of Matthew and the other gospels, then the reasons that we have for trusting him giving us this account, even though it's brief, even though it's strange, even if he's the only person who gives us that information, our reasons are routed through why we trust him in other categories. And also our reasons are routed through, if the resurrection did indeed happen, then raising a few saints in Jerusalem. He gets this idea. He has this picture in his head that every dead person in Jerusalem like was resurrected and just went parading down the streets, and it's just like, that's overreading Matthew a lot. And so, but yeah, our reasons for thinking that this actually happened is, it's only found in Matthew. Yes, it describes some weird stuff like an earthquake and all this other stuff. And some Christian scholars will even say that it's like apocalyptic and symbolic and all this other stuff. And so there's like inner debate, and they think that like, therefore that this is like didn't happen. But again, it's an argument from silence. Many doesn't mean hundreds of people saw it. They could have been private appearances.
This is one of the issues that I have here, right? Because like, presumably Alex would also endorse the type of Ehrman argument, right? Where it's like, well, typically people wouldn't be buried in a tomb. Tombs aren't like that common, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
But then Alex also wants to like read this text that says all the tombs opened up. So it's like, well, how many tombs do you want to say that there were, Alex? Because if you want to like make this seem like a huge event,
mm-hmm.
well, which is it? Were there tombs that people were buried in or not?
Right.
There's just so many issues here on top of what he's trying to get at. And so, not to mention the fact that he says he takes a pericope by pericope approach, but then still assesses the prior probability of any other pericope being true or not based off of what he thinks Matthew is willing to invent in this particular pericope. So like, what are we doing?
Yeah. And so if he's going to do that, then he's going to basically just, every time there is a pericope of a story of Jesus healing somebody or doing something miraculous in the Gospels, and especially if it's like only recorded in one particular Gospel, let's say like the widow at Nain and Jesus raising her son, like, well, it's a miracle and it's only in one Gospel, therefore invented. I mean, that's like, it's not a very good historical criteria. Like, how in the world are you ever supposed to know, if you're an atheist and miracles did happen in the past, how are you ever going to know you're wrong if that's the way that you're going to judge things, right? Again, we're looking at the whole case for the historical reliability of the Gospels, which he just, again, hand waves, completely brushes aside, acts like it doesn't even exist, because here's one weird story and I have an argument from silence. Therefore, Matthew's willing to invent stuff up. Therefore, these aren't reliable stories. And it's just like, that doesn't work, man. That doesn't follow. Like, you have to give us more than that.
And again, I'm also a little frustrated that he hand waved my resurrection resuscitation distinction too.
Yeah.
And for anybody that isn't familiar with that distinction, all I mean by that is Jesus is the only one that I think was resurrected, in the sense that resurrection is a permanent state, an eschatological state, where resuscitation is something where the person eventually dies again. And I think we have tons of instances of resuscitations in the Bible, but one of true resurrection, which is Jesus.
Right. And if he's going to pull in Dale Allison, Dale Allison is completely inconsistent in his own methodology, because like, he's open to Buddhist rainbow body miracles. But then he hand waves away the rising of the saints and gives people like like Jake O'Connell, who's written on the resurrection, for example. Like his criticism in his book of Jake O'Connell is just like he basically just calls him credulous. But then like rainbow Buddhist miracle bodies, rainbow body Buddhist miracles and stuff. Well, no, that's got at least something going for it. It's just like, but he's a Christian scholar, and so I'm going to quote him. I don't know. Anyways, now I'm probably the one that's all over the place. But yeah, I just found this whole thing odd. It's just like you're not even being able to talk about the resurrection itself, the evidence for the resurrection itself, which would mutually support this particular miracle. And like I said, is kind of routed through it. He's just like off on this tangent. So
anyway. And again, to be fair, I could have done better rhetorically to get us back on track. I was just like, Alex just was throwing the bones in front of me, and I took the bait constantly. So for anybody that's like not familiar with arguments from silence, like we can get into the nerdy mathy stuff as to why they're not very strong, and at best they're like maybe just very weak evidence against the reliability of the Gospels.
He's about to make another one here in just a moment.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna pause it there for now.
Yeah,
are you ready to go?
Yeah.
That's a resurrection in order to make a theological
big
point.
Inference there, right?
Well,
because I know you like to, for instance, you like to talk about the flight to Egypt, and you like to say that Matthew invented the flight to Egypt.
Luke.
No, Luke's the one that doesn't mention it. Matthew's the one that mentions it.
Sorry, Matthew.
It's okay,
yeah,
it's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, Matthew, and then typically the way you run this argument is Matthew invented the flight to Egypt. Luke doesn't mention it. The reason why Luke doesn't mention it is because it didn't happen. Matthew mentions it, and he tells us why, to put Jesus into prophecy. Here's a counter hypothesis.
Sure.
What if it's just the case that Matthew is not making up historical facts and he's doing some sort of midrash? And what I mean by this is that he's looking at this historical thing that happened, the flight to Egypt, and taking this Hosea passage, which, by the way, would be a kind of a clunky passage to use if you wanted to make up a historical fact for prophecy. Because that Hosea passage is not inherently...
I think we might be getting slightly off... But I have to be allowed to speak here. I think we're getting slightly off topic. The problem with the birth narrative story is not...
I have to be allowed to speak.
I was frustrated when he said, I think we're getting off topic, when like...
You started by getting off topic.
This is what he wanted to bring up and talk about.
Yeah. You're trying to like...
Going?
No, you can keep going. That's fine.
Well, no, I'm just following your lead, bro. I don't know.
No, I just had to laugh. I just had to laugh because he's like, I just had to laugh because he was like, you got to let me speak here. When it was like, he was the one filibustering on you just a few minutes ago, just a minute ago, really. And then like, you're basically trying to bring up another, like, hey, Alex, this is another weak argument from silence that you make. Let me show you why this doesn't work. And he's just like, no, we're getting off topic. And it's like, maybe he just wasn't making the connection that you were trying to make there. I see where you're trying to go. There's other things, other areas where he attacks Matthew using similar arguments that are also just like weak arguments from silence, that are just illicit. They don't work. They're bad. And like, you're trying to make a connection there. And he's just like, well, you're getting off topic. I have to be allowed to speak here, so more flags can go up because I want to get you out of here. It's just like, I don't know. That's maybe my biased take on it, but I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's just not a good way to move forward into the conversation. But again, it's just a weird format in general, and I can't necessarily blame him for.
Yeah, I mean, Alex is doing a job. Alex is doing a good job here.
Yeah,
right?
anybody would be doing the same thing.
He's doing a good job. This is where if you want to go into responding to this Matthew passage here, like, do you want to do that now, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I could cover it real quick. And so basically, the argument from, did you want to cover it, or do you want me to kind of talk about it a little bit?
Your call, bro. This is your stream.
Oh, okay. No, go ahead. I'll if you're prepared and you got all kinds of stuff, then you're the guest, man. So
I was just gonna I'll do the long story short, and then we can go from there. How about that?
Yeah, sounds good.
So for anybody not familiar, midrash is like a really generic term, right? And it's actually like, I know people in our camp, Eric, the maximalist camps, probably didn't like my use of the word there because it's connotated a lot with like what Lacona and others would call midrash, which is fact-changing literary devices.
You have Robert Gundry who likes to use that a lot, and he's saying that Matthew is making up a lot of stuff.
Right, and that's not
Right.
what I'm saying here.
Yep.
What I am saying here, there's 2 points there's a few points I wanted to make here, but I just didn't get a chance to like land the plane. In hindsight, I shouldn't have even thought I would have been able to. But long story short is, like I said, I think Matthew's doing midrash here as a right, and what I mean by that is there's a specific type of midrash called pesher, and I think you can see an example of this in the Dead Sea Scrolls. For instance, there's the Isaiah pesher 2b. And the basic idea here is that pesher is a type of looking back into the Old Testament and retroactively like finding meaning in it to fit your historical context that you're in now based off what's actually happening, right?
Right.
That's what's going on in that Dead Sea Scroll, for instance, that I'm pointing out, the Isaiah pesher 2b. And so another hypothesis that I'm putting out there is that the flight to Egypt happened, and Matthew's doing pesher, in other words, looking back on this Hosea passage, out of Egypt I will call my son, and applying that typologically to something that actually happened with Jesus. Evidence for that, one, would be the clunkiness of that passage. It's not strictly messianic or explicitly messianic. If Matthew's going to make up something, right, he's going to do something a lot more explicit. Right. Another piece of evidence for this also would be the fact that I think we actually have external corroboration for the flight to Egypt because of the mention of Archelaus in the Gospels, right? Because we have that external confirmation where Joseph is coming back and he finds out Archelaus is reigning. Instead of going home, he diverts to Galilee, and that's all we hear. And then later on, if we read Josephus, we find out Archelaus took over after Herod dies, kills a bunch of people at Passover, cancels Passover. You have this huge migration of Jews coming while Joseph is coming home. Fine. Well, of course, then, yeah, of course, they're going to tell Joseph, well, yeah, this dude just murdered a bunch of people. Oh, yeah, I can say murder on YouTube. Sorry, I'm so used to TikTok sometimes now. And so that there's that dovetailing, that's external corroboration for the authenticity of this event. That's the main point I'm trying to make here.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. And so like there's Alfred Edersheim, who looked at like a lot of Targums, Talmuds, different Jewish writings, and compiled 450 plus messianic prophecies. And Hosea 11:1, which is out of Egypt I've called my son, is not considered to be a messianic prophecy in any of those, right? And so if Matthew is making up a story, he's got 450 different messianic verses that he could invent a story. And so it is clunky. It's weird to make up something like that. And then, yes, you're exactly right. There was, Josephus tells us that basically his dad, before he died, had some people, I think there was like a fight over like some shields that were being raised in the temple, and the Jews got really offended by that. And I don't know, I think there was some scrapping and some Jews got killed. And the next year there were some Jews that were still angry about it, and they were talking about it, and they started clashing with Roman soldiers, and some Jews killed some Roman soldiers. They stoned them.
Yep.
And Archelaus pulled there's a new sheriff in town routine, and he had 3,000 Jews slaughtered. He sent a troop of armed horsemen to completely surround the temple, said nobody can go in, and anybody in cannot get out. And yeah, it was so bad that Passover was canceled. And this is why it makes sense that we see in Matthew 2, in that same story, where Joseph is like, oh, Archelaus is reigning instead of his dad. I just fled from one homicidal maniac to save my son, and now there's another homicidal maniac on the throne. And so, yeah, I think instead of going back to Bethlehem, I'm going to go to Galilee. And so this story actually has like tons of good historical sense, not to mention the fact that Herod was a paranoid, crazy person who bumped off all kinds of people. I mean, he killed high priests that were related to him. He killed some of his sons, anybody who was perceived as a threat to his throne. This is just well documented. He killed. And so, like, for somebody to say, well, Josephus didn't report the slaughter of the innocents, when we're also talking about Bethlehem, which how many innocents are there? How many kids were there? It's not like Bethlehem's like some boom town. It's not Jerusalem. It's a tiny little hamlet.
I crunched the numbers one time, actually, based off like I forgot who it was. Some scholars put together like a guesstimate of the population at the time. And I
Yeah.
crunched some numbers together, and it was like max 15, 16 kids.
Right. Right. And then so you also have Josephus, who is writing for a Roman audience. And Romans regularly, I hate to say it, but like expose their children, left them out to die, because it was easier than getting an abortion at that particular time. They didn't have a whole high regard for like life of small children. And so like as if his even if he knew about it, as if his audience would even care. And so it's extremely a flimsy argument. Alex shouldn't think that it's a good argument. I get why you're trying to bring it in, because it's just another argument from silence that he likes to make against Matthew. This one is much worse than the one with the rising of the saints. But yeah, anyways. That's just wanted to
100%. And there's tons of these that we can answer. Like, and again, with the raising of the saints, I think it's an argument from silence. And if you look at the raising from the saints in light of all the positive evidence that we have for the reliability of the Gospels, the historical reportage model, and all this other stuff,
right.
What's the issue, right? At the end of the day, like,
yeah, the rising of the saints does not swallow all of the positive evidence that we have.
Yeah.
And what you were saying earlier about story by story approach, the story by story approach is like every time we look at a new story in the Gospels, we're going to basically have amnesia, forget about all the times that they've given us reliable information, and then try to use all this kind of criteria like like dissimilarity, or like looking for Semitisms, or external corroboration, or all kinds of other things. And we're going to say like, this is historical, we think, and this one's not as historical. But what we're saying with the reportage model is like, when these guys are constantly getting it right, they're showing themselves to be honest, they're showing themselves to be truthful, they're showing themselves to be well informed. Like, you have to look at the whole document. You don't just like, it's just like if somebody is constantly telling you the truth all the time, I don't scrutinize everything that my wife says with each story that she tells me. She's a generally trustworthy person. And so I don't feel the need to do that. Even if she does tell me something that is a little bit extraordinary, I might raise an eyebrow a little bit. But if I have tons of other reasons to trust her, and I get her testimony that she can't be mistaken and she's not lying, then I'm going to trust her.
Yeah. And this is why I've been, well, you probably haven't been paying attention because you're busy. But like, this is one of the reasons I've been kind of on a rampage recently about the historical reportage model. Because I think people have just assumed it as an axiomatic position at this point, the fact-changing literary device model, because of like, what's his name? The guy that wrote that book about what are the Gospels, and he argues they're Greco-Roman biographies.
Richard Burridge,
yeah. And that's pretty much like an axiomatic position at this point, and people just like assume it and don't even question it, and just go like, well, John, at first glance, seems like he's disagreeing with the synoptics on the date of the crucifixion. Well, why would I even bother trying to harmonize and look deeper into this? He's obviously just moving it because he wants to present Jesus as the Passover lamb, right? But then, like, all you need to do is read it the Greek, and it's like, oh, he's using the word Batiskivi. I mean, that's Friday.
Yeah.
Why do I need to make up stuff
to
explain this when there's nothing to explain?
People act like that's like such a complicated contradiction, and we don't have to get into that one.
I'm just like giving an example of that one that's like so silly.
I've done a video in response to what's the guy, Useful Charts. He uses that one on like what day did Jesus die, which Alex does bring up in this debate. I think it's with
me against Big John. I think Big
John. And so Big John Steele, give him a sub. He's owning the atheist online. But anyway, but yeah, like that one's weak, and it's just like, I don't know. Tanis here in the chat saying we just have one source is not a good argument. We have just one source for a lot of things. We have to ask ourselves, why do we trust?
Yeah, but we need more than one source for things that are miraculous, because dead people stay dead.
Right. Like,
and I'm really bad at math, and so I'm going to make naive and normative induction arguments.
Right.
Sorry.
So
I'll
no, it's
pull
all
back
right.
the dork. I'll pull back the dorkiness there. You want to keep going?
Yeah, we can keep going.
Not just that a story is being invented to fulfill prophecy, although we're told that that's why it's done. The problem is that it contradicts the other account. That
Well,
the
I'm
family
totally
go-
fine with
the
that.
family
So,
stay in
so if you
Jerusalem.
look at the birth narratives altogether, I think there's room for one discrepancy, and that is
That is
that
Egypt and
Luke
Jerusalem?
doesn't mention it. I
well,
think
well,
that's
well, Luke says that they go to the temple.
what.
Luke says that they go to the temple.
Yeah,
So hold on.
I'm
Let
going
me-
to agree with
let,
you.
Let me finish it. Luke says that the family go to the temple and present Jesus.
That time
in
you did
Jerusalem.
look upset, man. You looked upset right there. You're like,
I was pissed. I was
"Dog."
actually mad at that point because I'm like, dude, you gotta like let me respond to something.
Yeah.
To be fair, I would probably be doing the same thing if I was Alex because I'm making Alex's arguments for him, so I can just cut to the chase.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's just like, here, let me grant you this one contradiction. Like, and this is the thing with that Luke 2:39. And for those people who don't know, like, Luke, of course, never mentions the flight to Egypt. And if you're reading Luke 2:39, you get this impression that like they went and presented Jesus at the temple, and then they just kind of like, all right, everything's cool now. We're going to Nazareth and whatever. But like, let's just say that like Luke didn't hear about the flight to Egypt somehow, and he just kind of made an assumption. Are we going to say like, okay, but all of the external corroboration that we have from like, say, the book of Acts and all the times that he gets like all kinds of like locations right, titles of local officials right, weather correct, and like, place names, slang, he interweaves with Paul's epistles and like all the undesigned coincidences between Paul's epistles and the book of Acts, and like all the details that he doesn't just get right in the book of Acts, but there's tons of details that he gets right in Luke's gospel. And we're just going to go like, well, yeah, like he kind of filled in a blank here and made a good faith mistake at worst. We're not even saying that he did. We're just saying granting for the sake of argument, that's the best thing that you could do, Alex. And it's just like, that doesn't destroy reportage model.
I actually think that like, so I haven't landed the plane here. I think well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you would actually consider this like an actual contradiction or an error or something like that. I don't know where I land the plane yet, to be honest with you. But I'll say this. Given the historical reportage model, Luke just not knowing about the flight to Egypt is like hardly surprising. Like Matthew has privileged access to the people involved in the infancy narrative. So like, yeah, of course he would have access to that information.
Which we've seen with the illustration that we just gave.
Exactly. And so like Luke not having access to that information, it's like hardly surprising at all.
Right.
Right.
What's
the issue? This seems to be in line with the historical reportage model.
Right. Because we see in all kinds of normal, everyday, secular history some kind of discrepancy. But this isn't the kind of crazy discrepancy that would be like, therefore they don't know what they're talking about at all.
No,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. Especially about the resurrection narratives, right?
Right.
This is about the resurrection. Luke just missing a small detail about the infancy narratives
and filling in a blank, maybe.
Cool.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. So
yeah. It is kind of weird, and so it's just like you kind of got stuck on. And I mean, I guess this is where I think like the minimalist will be like, aha, see, and we'll maybe talk about that in a little bit here. Mm-hmm. You should have just like talked about the appearances, and you shouldn't have gone for all this gospel reliability stuff, because like you just go with what the scholars grant, and you don't have to have all these arguments. You could just grant them all these contradictions and still make a case for the the appearances. We're going to say why that's not the case in a little bit here, but he's just basically kind of like throwing out enough like distractions, and you're kind of trying to be like anticipate all of those distractions and just knock them down ahead of time. And so I guess like looking back now, like if there was a different direction that you would have taken this down, like what would you have done? Like, you know what I mean?
So I think this is one of the things I think I'm allowed to say, because I signed an NDA and there's stuff I can't talk about, right?
Sure.
But one of the things I think I'm allowed to say is that this is actually our second interaction.
Mhm.
Our first interaction is the one we'll cover later, which is the Christology one.
Yeah.
In that interaction, one of the things that you don't see is me actually telling Alex, hey, I know you don't think John's reliable. I'm going to focus on Mark. I'll play by your rules here, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Right. I wish one of the things I would have done is gone, hey, Alex, I played by your rules earlier. Just play with mine a little bit here, just so we can kind of see where we can go, kind of a thing. That's one thing I wish I would have done differently. The other thing I wish I would have done differently is actually focused on the resurrection appearances, and then just gone, hey, Alex, we don't have time to talk about all these contradictions. So, and maybe just like done. I'm not a rhetorician. I'm not a good politician. So I don't know if these are the right moves. This is me just kind of thinking out loud, right? I wish I'd have done something like, look, if you want to talk about all these contradictions and the deep in the weeds stuff about reliability of the Gospels, let's have a one-on-one conversation publicly or debate where there isn't a time pressure. For now, here are the 21 unique witnesses. Here is the context of those witnesses. I think this is much more expected on the condition Jesus rose from the dead than any of the other competing theories. If you disagree, tell me why. I wish I would have done something like that. But that's just like kind of like not who I am. I like to talk about this kind of stuff and nerd out. So that's probably like a double-edged sword.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think you have to say, kind of like, for the sake of this debate, like, yeah, I would love to talk about contradictions and or your different objections to the Gospels in terms of that. But like I'm making a positive case. Like, let me, and this is what you tried to do, and he wouldn't let you do, is you were like, let me give you some, sampling of the reportage model, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I would have tried to do is just give like a sampling of the reportage model, maybe even with this particular, like the story with Herod and the thing, right?
Yeah,
that's an argument that he's going to want to make, and just say, hey, okay, let me just give you one example of the reportage model we have, and then just be like, and then if I can, like, here's another one, and we literally have dozens and dozens and dozens of these. And I understand that you probably have contradictions in the back of your head. I think most of them are pretty easily resolved without resorting to, strained harmonization and different things like that. And so now what are you going to do with this evidence? You know what I'm saying? And so,
I wish
like, is it just
I
because
wish
of the
in
prior,
hindsight-
because of you? Yeah.
Yeah, I wish in hindsight I would have just like signposted and been like, yeah, I can talk about this for hours if you want to. I have 3 minutes. Let's just cut to the chase, kind of a thing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. If somebody in the chat's like a debate coach and like has a better analysis on this, on what I could have done better, like, I'm not a teddy bear. You actually, and Eric will attest to this too, and everybody that knows me will attest to this. You'll hurt my feelings more if you hold back than if you would just like let me have it. You know what I'm saying? Like, let me know what I could have done better so I can be better.
Right. I'm saying this from hindsight, knowing that I probably would have looked goofy, because it's just like, I would have probably done a similar approach. I would have been like, oh, you want to talk about this contradiction? Let's, and then Alex just kind of,
hey, bro, like,
yeah. And then Alex is like,
I'm happy.
Whoa. No, you got to let me talk. Now I'm going to filibuster and wait for these flags to get raised.
I did.
For you to
That's
get out
the
of
other
here.
thing, man. I did not know what to do with the filibuster. Alex's filibuster worked. If you look at the comments about me, everybody except for the people that like me or have already liked me, everybody's like, yeah, that Than guy wouldn't let Alex talk. He was such a jerk, blah, 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 blah. And that's exactly what was going through my head. I'm like, I don't know how to get out of this without looking like a bad guy, or like looking like I'm losing because Alex won't let me talk.
See, to me, I guess so. I don't know. I don't know why people would perceive that, because like, for me, like, everybody that I know that I've talked to that have seen this is just like, why didn't you let that guy talk a little bit more? So, but maybe I just hang out with too many mixologists. So
yeah, well, those are all people probably that agree with that's know me, right?
Yeah. Well, some of them didn't know you. They're like, who's this guy? He's got maximalist vibes. I'm like, I was like, he's a maximalist. So.
Max vibes.
Max
Um,
vibes.
no, yeah, no. I mean, and again, if Alex ever does listen to this, I mean, I would love a long form discussion with you, man.
Yeah,
and
I mean, I think that would go way better. And I don't
Yeah.
blame Alex. Like, I understand we're expressing frustration.
No,
With it.
I have no ill will towards him for this.
Maybe he really does think that that's like the best way forward. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's frustrating to watch for me.
Yeah, I also just don't think Alex will probably have a long form discussion with me until it's like worth having it with me. I'm nobody knows who I am.
Yeah, Mr. Million subs there. So
So
he's debating David Wood pretty soon on the topic we're gonna discuss in
Yeah.
a minute here. So
is there anything else you wanted to cover before we moved on? I always feel like there is something.
we could either deal with the Christology stuff now, or we could talk about Trent Horn kind of reacted.
Oh yeah,
to
maybe.
this.
Well, I guess that's related to the topic we're still talking about.
Yeah. So Trent's
Did you want me to pull it up, or you just want to talk about it?
Yeah, we could just basically talk about it. And
Okay.
so Trent basically critiqued the debate and talked about how he had applied, and there were some things that he would have done differently than you guys. And he specifically talked about the resurrection and how you guys were kind of getting into gospel reliability, and that's just not really conducive to this kind of debate. You got to do something like more of a minimal facts. And so for those of you guys who don't know, I'm sure if you've been living under a rock in the apologetics world, minimal facts is basically you're only going to use data that 90+% of scholars are going to grant. Okay. And so what you're going to get out of that basically is the creed in 1 Corinthians 15. Everybody grants that Paul believed that he had an appearance, and so did his brother, Jesus' brother James, although not everybody's going to quite grant that. But what's definitely part of the creed is the appearance to Peter and the 12, right? And so they're going to say, okay, well, we have group appearances. And so like we're going to rule out naturalistic hypothesis, like they weren't lying, which is fine because Paul was definitely willing to suffer. And I think we have good evidence that the disciples were at least willing to suffer. And then we're going to rule out like, hallucinations, because group hallucinations and all that other kind of stuff don't happen. And so Trent's like, I would have taken this approach. Now, this kind of surprised me a little bit because I was actually a long time ago, Trent debated Pine Creek Doug, one of our favorite counter apologists there, Than. And he was basically like, asked me to come on and kind of give some feedback. And I criticized minimal facts on his channel. Maybe he forgot, maybe he just didn't find my arguments persuasive or whatever. But our criticism of minimal facts is basically this. If somebody did say you are Trent, and you get up there and you go 90% of scholars grant the appearances, and so I don't think it was hallucinations, and I don't think it was this, that, and the other. The best explanation is that the resurrection actually happened. All Alex has to do at this point and go, neat. What were the appearances like?
And how many appearances were there?
Yeah. What were they like? Did they touch him? Did they talk to him? Did they do anything? Like we don't have anything, right? 1 Corinthians 15 is a creed, right? So we have group appearances.
I can interject really quick too, by the way. Yeah. If I'm the skeptic in that situation, I'm not even going to approve of the vocabulary you're using, which is appearances, right? Like appearances carries with it a connotation that like it's not just a subjective experience that somebody had, right? I think that's important too, but sorry.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're good. And so if our criticism of this particular approach is that if we don't know what the appearances were like, it's really hard to justify how rational the disciples were, right? And so any approach that basically doesn't get into the Gospels experiences, like the experiences that we have, the multi-sensory experiences, group appearances, touching, eating, talking, there's all kinds of things going on, right? If we don't have that, then you have a very weak case, right? And a skeptic could just go, I don't know what the experiences were like. How could I actually say that it was a miracle? And so that's all Alex has to do. Trent, what were the appearances like? Well, group hallucinations don't happen. Okay, great. There's all kinds of people that report seeing all kinds of things, and fuzzy, vague, non-detailed appearances is not going to flip my skeptic scale from here to here, right? And so you're going to have to argue for the reliability of the gospels, and just frankly, that takes more work. So it doesn't matter if you think this is more rhetorically powerful and I can kind of give it as an elevator pitch and just boom, 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 and say it really fast and just say, I'm willing to grant all the contradictions in the world in the gospels to you. You're not going to get to enough weight for somebody to go to the resurrection, especially if you're willing to grant contradictions or grant for the fact for the sake of argument that they made stuff up. Well, if they made stuff up, then the appearances, how good could the appearances be if they felt the need to have to make stuff up?
That's the whole point, right? It's just like, look, man, if you're going to run the minimal facts argument against me, but I think the gospel authors were able to make stuff up, well, why can't I just say, why should I believe that the appearances that they're testifying about, even the fuzzy ones, aren't just made up? Like,
right.
If you're running the minimal facts, yeah, you can shotgun it out. Which, by the way, I think you can shotgun out the max data case even just as fast. But if you're running the minimal facts, I rhetorically and dialectically speaking, the conversation will end up the same. At the end of the day, you do have to do the work, and I just don't think it works.
Yeah.
So.
Any miracle report, if you just don't have details of the actual event, it's just not as strong. It's just not a strong argument. You have to have details. And so, that's basically our beef with that. And so, I don't think it works. I was kind of disappointed to hear Trent say that, because it's just like, all you can basically do is just go, but group appearances don't happen. Group appearances don't happen. Okay. He says that he appeared to the 12. Like, was it all at once? Like, does the text even really say that? Like, a skeptic could just kind of dial up their skepticism at least a tiny bit, not an unreasonable amount. And again, we know of like all kinds of goofy people who think that they've seen certain things, but with fuzziness with the details, it just doesn't work. So yeah.
I'll also just add this in. I don't know if what I'm about to say will make sense or not, because I don't really know how to word it. But I think a lot of the complaints that people have about the maximalist case, when they are minimal facts people, what they're really like, all the source of their complaints, I think, is misidentified, right? Because all the complaints that they have about the max data case, I don't think is actually in virtue of the max data case. I think the max data case just puts the complaints out there on the table and says, let's deal with this. Kind of like I said in the beginning of our discussion, this is just a really interdisciplinary question. The difference between us and the minimal facts person is, I'm just like, yeah, it's interdisciplinary. This is a tough topic. Let's get tough. While the minimal facts person tries to avoid those things, but you still have to answer all those questions. You can't just put them to the side and be like, well, we covered this little area here, and that answers the question. Do you get what I'm trying to say there? It's just like a byproduct of the question of the resurrection, not what approach you take.
At the end of the day, you have to man up and you have to defend the gospels.
Man up and defend the gospels. Heck yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is like, there's so much good evidence. There's so much good positive evidence for the reliability of the gospels. And in a debate format like that, it's just going to be next to impossible to bring out, unfortunately. And so I think, again, just going back to it, it's just like, if we have this is, how would this not be the best explanation? And let me give you at least like a tiny evidence sampler of the reportage model, I think is the best that you could do. And if a minimalist is going to say, well, see, it didn't work. It's like, okay, again, but your approach isn't going to work either, because you're shot down with the moment they say, cool, what were they like?
Yeah.
What did they experience? And so it's just like, big whoop-de-doo that it was efficient.
Yeah.
Like, it's efficient and weak it doesn't help. You know what I mean?
It's not efficient if it doesn't work.
Right.
Right?
No.
So that's the
Yeah.
point. Efficiency is getting you to your anyway.
Yeah.
If it's okay, Eric, did you see the comment I starred?
Oh yeah, sure. Let me
right.
read a quick. If you guys have super chats, feel free to drop them in if you have any
Yeah.
questions. Hey, does Than have a YouTube channel or anything? Always happy
Yeah.
to support more competent apologists.
My channel is Exploring Reality. I'll put a chat down so you guys can see me. But it's more complicated than that. Because I'm actually going to be putting aside Exploring Reality. I've already done this actually. Mike and I from Inspiring Philosophy are like merging together. And so all my work going forward is actually going to be being posted on Inspiring Philosophy. I'm not deleting any of my previous work on Exploring Reality. And I'll probably still put out stuff on Exploring Reality here and there. The stuff on there is like really dense. And the stuff we'll be putting out on Inspiring Philosophy, it's not going to be as dense. And so if I just like need to get the dorkiness out and put a long form video out, I will on Exploring Reality. Just moving forward, it won't be as heavily edited, not a bunch of B-roll. It'll probably just be me talking and maybe editing some sources and stuff like that up. That's the long story short.
Yeah. So he's a big deal. He's debating Alex O'Connor. He's joining Inspiring Philosophy. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, definitely if you want to support Than in that, that would be very helpful because it does take prayers and finances and everything else to make those kind of moves and make it full time. But I guess it's already happening though, for sure, right?
Well, yeah, it's already happening. What Mike and I need to do now, and for those that don't know, right, like I wasn't always doing this. I used to be a firefighter, left the fire service before I got married and got into sales. And then when I felt like God was calling me into ministry, long story short, left sales behind. Doing ministry now, but I also work like 2 other part-time jobs on the side between like coaching for fitness and walking dogs and stuff like that. Mike and I are hoping to raise enough support this year on Inspiring Philosophy so that way I can just not have to do all that extra work and focus all of my time to this ministry stuff.
Right.
So if you guys do want to support us, you can start donating through Inspiring Philosophy. I have to get used to that still. Through Inspiring Philosophy. And if it's specifically for me, anything like that you want to support, just leave it in a little note on there.
Cool. Awesome. Speaking of IP, do you stream with IP or David? Well, last was it Monday you streamed with IP? I'm guessing he's talking about David Wood. I have not had the opportunity to stream with D Wood. But
let's make it happen.
Maybe someday.
I can get you in with him through transitive property. With Mike.
Okay. That's true. They're like buds. The other day, Apostate Prophet saw me in the chat and said I was cool. So I knew at that point that I have arrived as a critic of Islam when AP says I'm cool.
Nice.
So it's almost like when my grandma says I'm cool, I'm like, yes, I am cool.
I think you're cool.
Yeah. So thank you. More people need to agree with my grandma. So anyways, you want to jump to the Christology stuff now? It's at 1:16:14.
I moved us already there too. So
awesome.
All right, here we go.
Good to see you again.
All right, step off.
2 things. Have you heard of the cloud writing?
Do you say pause?
I was just saying again, you were like, boom, step off, people. I'm not back down from this chair. It's just funny to watch people run. Go ahead.
Dude, I actually really did not like the running. I think it wasn't in the final edit, by the way. There was one time that I actually tried to sprint to the chair and like get through people for it. And exactly what I was afraid of happened. For those that don't know, I'm short. I'm 5'7", but I weigh about 175 and I sit around like 13% body fat. So I'm like kind of a dense dude. And I was terrified of hurting people. So I'm like, I'm just not going to like truck people or anything. There's one time I tried and I like lowered my shoulder a little bit and this dude went flying and like things went into slow motion a little bit. I'm like looking at this dude flying and I'm looking at the empty chair before me. And I'm like, I got to catch him. I can't. And I caught him and then somebody else is in the chair by that point. And that's when I'm like, yeah, I just can't. If I can't get up there unless I'm gonna without hurting people. So
Was a Mormon though? Did you truck the Mormon?
no, it was not the Mormon.
That's disappointing, Than. I'm just kidding. To any Mormon watchers out there, I'm totally messing around. I'm not saying truck Mormons unless you have the opportunity. Again, just kidding. YouTube, don't take this video down.
Yeah. I will.
But,
If you want to fight like in a consensual, not consensual. Is that the right word? That sounds.
I don't know. It sounded a little frisky now.
Well, if we have both consented to fisticuffs, I will do it.
That's right. Yeah.
With rules.
That's what Mormons are known for, is their cage fighting abilities.
All right, really quick before we move on, I do want to do one more plug, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Somebody said check out Nate Sala for debate coaching. Fun fact: I actually have an episode dropping. I think Monday night with Wise Disciple. Yeah, he had me on and interviewed me. So
Nice.
I did talk to him. And we will be talking. Yeah, and yeah, be looking to look out for that Monday night. Okay, let's go.
Rider motif?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, the Cloud Rider motif.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'm assuming you've heard of like the two powers in heaven motif.
No.
Okay. There's a Jewish historian named Alan Segal. He wrote a book called The Two Powers in Heaven. And what he talks about is there's this weird thing happening in the Hebrew Bible where there's almost like two Yahweh figures that they point to. So some verses, for instance, will say like Yahweh rained down fire from Yahweh. And so Philo of Alexandria in the Second Temple period talks about this two powers in heaven motif. And he says like there's two Yahwehs. There's the first power and the second power, but they're both Yahweh. It's almost like a sort of proto-Trinitarian view. That's one thing that I'll just kind of put there for now. Another puzzle piece here is you've heard about the Cloud Rider motif. So in the Ugaritic texts, in the Baal cycle, we see Baal referenced as the one who rides the clouds. And I think you can see that actually adopted by the Israelites in the Hebrew Bible as well. So Psalm 104 is like an exaltation psalm and actually talks about Yahweh being the one that rides the clouds in heaven. He is the king. I see that as kind of a polemic of calling Yahweh the king over Baal. Are we on the same page there?
Sure.
Okay.
Can I say one thing really quick that's not related to this? I'm really self-conscious about my bald spot, and I just feel like Jubilee did me dirty, man. It was just like, let's just show every clip we can of like his thinning hair.
Do you know what the first thing I thought to myself when I saw this video? Oh, I didn't know Than had a bald spot. I was like, oh, he's got a bald spot.
Man, I feel like they did me so dirty. I actually talked to the people, like the film crew. I'm like, man, you guys better like not show this, okay? I'm getting threatened.
put like a little something on, use some AI to cover me up, man. I don't know. I need a. If anybody has successfully gotten rid of thinning hair, because I'm not actually bald. What's actually happening? It's thinning a little bit, and I have 2 colics up there. So it looks worse. Yeah, if you got advice, let me know. But I don't have money, so anyway, sorry. Yeah. Maybe we'll get a sponsor or something. What are those guys called? The
Hymns. Hymns is like the new thing.
Yeah.
Hymns. If you're watching this, man, I'll partner with you. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm not taking the other stuff though.
Yeah. I just want the hair stuff, man.
We'll stay out of the other stuff.
All right. I'm sorry to derail us. Well, let's get.
No, you're good. You're good.
Daniel 7, you'll see a messianic passage there about how God will come down, and you'll see the Son of Man come riding in the clouds of heaven, and his kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom.
Do you think Daniel thought that the Son of Man was going to be God, since he says that he's riding on a cloud?
This is a really interesting point.
I don't think that he did, because he was a Jewish writer.
I lean on saying yes, but I don't know if I can say that with like absolute certainty.
The prophet Daniel was expecting the Messiah to be God.
I think so.
Oh, sorry, the Son of Man to be God.
That's a motif only applied to God. So you have this cloud rider motif.
By the way, I do think that there are multiple things which people, even in Jesus' time, thought only God could do.
Mm-hmm.
Things like forgiving sins. And when Jesus does these things, he's not doing so in order to prove that he's God, but in order to prove that the Son of Man has the authority to do that.
I completely agree. This isn't that kind of an argument. This is an identification.
I saw those flags go up in my peripheral at that moment, by the way.
Yeah.
I was really frustrated.
I would be frustrated too. It's just like the ratio of flags going up to Alex speaking is just like too high, because it's like he's not even made an argument yet. He's just basically said like, well, Daniel's Jewish, so he can't think this. It's like he's seeing a vision, bro. Like Like, he's not giving an interpretation at the particular time. He's reporting a particular vision that the implications are actually pretty obvious. And then let me just throw this out here real quick. So you just referred to Daniel 7:13 through 14, right?
Yeah.
The same language is used in 626 when Nebuchadnezzar is like, he's the living God, he endures forever, his kingdom will not be destroyed, his authority is forever. So do you think Daniel, just like the writer of Daniel, had like amnesia between 626 and 7:13 through 14?
Yeah.
Like,
Maybe Alex just didn't know.
Probably didn't off the top of
I
his
didn't bring
head.
up Daniel 6. I was trying to go fast
Excuse me.
because
Yeah.
if you look at the time, I have 1:24 at this point, and I'm just like, I need to go.
You gotta pack it in.
So, and for the chat too, I guess, like, let us know if this argument's not making sense. We can unpack it. I think that's
Yeah. We're happy to explain anything that we're
Yeah.
talking about here. I know we kind of nerd out, and not everybody is on the.
I'll also say this, by the way, whatever Daniel thought, or whatever the authors thought, if you want to hold to like some sort of other hypothesis here, that's totally fine. Whatever really is going on here, the answer to this question isn't too probative here, because the prompt here is Jesus never claimed to be God. And I think in the Second Temple period, all these puzzle pieces coming together lead people to understand certain motifs in a certain way. And so even if Daniel or those authors didn't believe Jesus, that the Son of Man or the Messiah would be God incarnate, that does not tell us what the Second Temple period Jew in the time of in place of the historical Jesus would have thought of these passages, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So where's Jesus claiming to be
Yes,
God?
that's where I'm going. So we have these puzzle pieces in place.
Sure.
If you fast forward to Mark's gospel, and I'm going to use Mark.
Let's do Mark.
Jesus before Caiaphas in Mark's gospel, Caiaphas asks him, "Who are you?" And instead of just explicitly saying, "I am God," Jesus quotes Daniel 7, saying he is the Son of Man, the human one, who will ride on the clouds, and calls himself the second power. So you have this two powers in heaven motif. The two powers, they're both God, and the cloud rider motif, and the Son of Man. He's quoting Daniel 7 to identify himself. After that, Caiaphas tears his robe and cries, "Blasphemy."
I do think that Jesus is making some pretty extraordinary claims to himself, such as being the Son of Man, but I still don't see why he's claiming to be God.
Did you catch what just happened?
I might have missed something there. It's like,
okay. It's very subtle. It's very subtle, because I brought up 3 puzzle pieces to contextualize Mark, right?
Yeah.
The two powers motif, which is that proto-Trinitarian thing. The cloud rider motif, which is the title given to God.
Yeah.
And the Son of Man, which I said explicitly is the human one, right?
Right. It's, to me, the only thing I caught is he just kind of nabroed you.
Well, so listen, I brought up 3 things.
Yeah.
Listen to this again.
If this were the way that he was trying to reveal his divinity, forgiving sins, and when Jesus does these things, he's not doing so in order to prove that he's God, but in order to prove that the Son of Man has the authority to do that.
I completely agree. This isn't that kind of an argument. This is an identification thing.
So where's Jesus claiming to be God?
That's where I'm going. So we have these puzzle pieces in place.
Sure.
If you fast forward to Mark's gospel, and I'm going to use Mark.
Let's do Mark.
Jesus before Caiaphas in Mark's gospel, Caiaphas asks him, "Who are you?" And instead of just explicitly saying, "I am God," Jesus quotes Daniel 7, saying he is the Son of Man, the human one, who will ride on the clouds, and calls himself the second power. So you have this two powers in heaven motif. The two powers, they're both God, and the cloud rider motif, and the Son of Man. He's quoting Daniel 7 to identify himself. After that, Caiaphas tears his robe and cries, "Blasphemy."
I do think that Jesus is making some pretty extraordinary claims to himself, such as being the Son of Man, but I still don't see why he's claiming to be God.
There it is.
Yeah.
Such as claiming to be the Son of Man and ignores the 2 other data points.
Right.
That's what's happening.
Right.
Like,
right.
He just threw away the cloud rider and 2 powers thing and focused on a Son of Man thing, which I explicitly said just literally means the human one.
Right. You're bringing in. He's just chunking out the data that he doesn't like, basically.
this were the way that he was trying to reveal his divinity to people, it'd be a strange and convoluted way to do it. Psalm 82 also talks about God presiding over a council of gods, saying,
so
you shall be called
I
gods.
think there's a mistake here.
And Jesus quotes that psalm when he's referring to his relationship with the Father
I understand what you're
in the
saying.
Gospel of
The
John.
issue
So
is
even if in the Old Testament you have these
two
sort of
hypotheses,
lesser
though,
gods,
right?
All right. I'll actually.
Jesus is
Your
only claiming to be that.
hypothesis, right? That this is not a Christological implication, and I have mine. And I get where you're saying, where you're coming from. But to the ancient author, how obvious would this be?
So the best we have here is Jesus claiming to be the Son of Man, and that might indicate that he might be God.
Yeah, but we don't predicate our hypotheses on the evidence we wish we did have. We go off the evidence that we do have.
That's right. And I don't think that
Look at
there's any
Tim. Look
point
at
where
Tim.
Jesus-
I know Tim's like, yeah, Bays. He's talking Bays.
Anyway, go ahead.
That's
I
pretty much
just
the end of that, right?
Yeah.
Interaction.
Yeah, to me that was like really frustrating. And if you watch him in the other interactions on this topic, he basically just kind of Dawa scripts and is like, I need the exact words.
Well, that's what's happening, right? Because
It's like, what?
I addressed his thing, right? Because he said, like, well, if this is the way that you're going to claim to be to be God, like this would be like a really strange way to do it, yada yada yada. But
He's talking to a Jewish audience.
In hindsight, what I should have done is gone, well, strange to who? Because to them, Caiaphas obviously understood what's going on here.
Yeah,
like you're
right.
trying to pull divine hiddenness, not
right
historical reconstruction.
Right. It was weird because it's like blasphemy. Okay, so blasphemy for what?
Right.
Like, how did they respond? How did they react when he was doing these things and claiming these things? They understood. It's just like it feels. I don't want to strawman Alex here, but it feels like I need the exact words. If you don't give me the exact words, then he's just making it too difficult for people to understand. And yet, all the proof that like Jesus does to show his divinity and just say like the Gospel of Mark are something that would have been understood in a Jewish context, like pretty clearly. You know what I'm saying? To at least to a certain extent, he's not going to go out and just say, hey guys, everybody, I'm God, bow down and worship me. Like that probably is a good way to get killed. So he's going to kind of do it roundabout, but at the same time, it's not so roundabout that like people aren't making the connections and being like, who is this guy? If they're accusing him of blasphemy, if like they're worshiping him in the boat in Matthew 14, if they're like, what manner of man is this after he stills the wind and the waves in Mark 4, which is definitely like a huge callback to like Psalm 107 and all kinds of other things like that. It's just like connect the dots, you know. It's like this isn't that complicated. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. And I'm not sure about like what I'm about to say. I'm not 100% sure on this because it's kind of hard to figure out what exactly is happening with some of these like other self-proclaimed messiahs, by the way. But like when I look at the text surrounding like Simon Bar Kokhba, who claimed to be the Messiah, I'm not seeing the same accusations of him in this text that I see of Jesus, which should tell you if I'm right. I'm more than willing to say like I'm not 100% sure what's going on there yet, and if somebody does, let me know. But if Jesus was being tried for blasphemy and accused of blasphemy for being just calling himself the Messiah or the Son of Man, I would also expect to see other Messiah figures to be accused in the same way when they do the same thing. Right. And I don't know that I actually see that in our historical records that we have. That's another point I could have brought up here. It's just I'm still not too confident on that point. But yeah, he just kind of hand waves some stuff away, which again, he's doing kind of what he should be doing in a debate format. But
well, I mean, even going back to that text in Mark 14, like he's basically saying, I'm your judge.
Yeah.
I'm going to be seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And like, he's setting himself up. He's basically like, you're not judging me here. Like I'm coming back to judge you.
Mm-hmm.
Judgment would be something that is an attribute of God. He's the one who comes and judges. We don't see, it's just like, he does all the things that God does, but he doesn't explicitly come out and say, hey guys, I'm God, worship me. Like the Dawas ask us for. And it's just like,
which is also consistent with the portrait the synoptics paint with the messianic secret motif.
Right. Right.
Like,
Yeah. I don't know. It is kind of weird. I'll be curious to see how his debate goes with David, because I know they're discussing this topic. I'm working on a video because I know Alex likes to talk about how Jesus forgiving their sins doesn't really have anything to do with him being God, because supposedly the disciples forgive sins later after John's gospel, and he's just saying I can do this as the Son of Man and different things like that. And so I'm working on something addressing that particular claim that should be out pretty soon. But
yeah,
there's, again, we're not boxing John aside. We think John is a perfectly reliable gospel, and the statements are pretty explicit there. But even when I was watching him talk to other people, he was just kind of like, well, I think you could even interpret John in different ways. And so I don't even think those are strong enough claims, is what I got from him. Those are the strongest claims, but even those kind of don't work. And I'm like, well, so basically you need the exact words, Alex. That's what I'm getting out of this.
It's not just that, though. There's a methodological concern, like an epistemic concern here that I have, which is, you'll notice that, like, if you listen to the debate, right, he's totally fine calling himself like an atheist when he says something like suffering makes God's existence unlikely. So he's totally fine with like probabilistic reasoning when it comes to his claims. But then if you're just going to give like data points to suggest that Jesus was claiming to be God in a probabilistic sense, he's not okay with it, because the objection is, well, this is also compatible with these models and these hypotheses. And he's just totally fine with, like, well, you're saying there's a chance. He's on like that desperate guy that wants to go on a date with a girl, and she's like, ah.
Yeah, the whole so you're saying there's a chance from Dumb and Dumber. And so Alex, you are not Lloyd Christmas if you're watching that. We're not saying that at all. But we are saying that, like, there's some inconsistency probabilistic wise. There are many data points that are favor Jesus claiming to be God on the high, assuming that what we have in the accounts, he's even willing to say, hey, even if we just take the accounts at face value, I don't think that he's claiming to be God. We're just saying there's all of these data points, even in the synoptic gospels, that point in that direction, that sure seem to be saying it, from like accepting worship, we see in Matthew's gospel, to like forgiving sins, which I know he has some convoluted explanations for that. I don't think that they work. To this particular point where basically Jesus is like, I'm the cloud rider. I'm the one who is in the Psalms. I'm the one who also is the Son of Man, who all the kingdoms of the world are going to serve me. I'm going to be your judge. It's just like, there's all of these things going on. And it's just kind of like, but he didn't exactly say it, so that doesn't seem to count. That's kind of how it's coming across to us. And so like, he needs to clarify that, because like it just comes across as like extremely stubborn, your average street level Muslim apologist arguing with a Christian almost.
Would you, like, here's just the thought experiment for anybody that's like listening to this and you're thinking Alex's epistemology or methodology here, or that kind of, not just, it's not unique to Alex, right? If you're thinking that methodology is good, here's just a little thought experiment, right? If you saw me walking in the grocery store and you saw kids next to me that were acting out, and I said, let's just say my kid's name is Eric for thought experiment, right? Hey, Eric, get your crap together or you're grounded for the weekend. If you can't, you need to behave.
This is based on a true story, by the way, guys.
Would you like think in your head, well, that guy's probably his dad, because that's what I would expect to see if Than is that Eric's dad. But like, there's a chance that he's not, because he didn't say the words like, hey, I am your father. Like, do you need a Star Wars moment in order to believe that I am that kid's father? Well, no, you're going to judge it based off my actions and the reactions of the people I'm interacting with. The context is going to tell you who I'm saying I am or thinking I am. And the reactions of the people I'm talking to are going to tell you the same thing. you're not going to just sit there and be like, well, yeah, I'm justified in thinking Than's not that kid's dad. That's ridiculous. So
No,
like,
that's
what's
crazy.
up with the epistemic inconsistency here? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think for Alex, it's not like it's really damaging for him to say, I think the synoptics and John have exalted Christology. Like, because for him, he's just like, but I think they made stuff up. And here's my arguments for why I think they made stuff up. And so it's a goofy hill to die on when there's all this evidence that points in the other direction.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even know why. It's like, was that just a filler topic or what? You know, I understand like talking about the Canaanites. I understand about talking about animal suffering. I understand talking about the resurrection. It would have been nice to deal with like positive arguments for the existence of God, or in this segment, instead of like, did Jesus ever claim to be God according to the Gospels? It's just like, as an atheist, you could just be like, sure, you know, like at least something pretty like highly exalted figure, you know. And I think Alex would at least acknowledge the Son of Man as an exalted figure, but to just be like, use these kind of like Unitarian kind of arguments, it's just kind of odd to see in a debate like this.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. Well, we have covered your two segments with Alex. Do you got anything else you want to add, or?
Nothing on my end, man. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you guys have questions for me, you can email me.
Well,
oh,
no. Well, this is a good segue, buddy, because next Saturday, right?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So a month ago, Jonathan McClatchy and I were on. We were talking to you guys about your doubts, and so basically, Than and I are volunteers for the Talk About Doubts ministry, which is started by our colleague Jonathan McClatchy. And basically, for those of you who don't know, talkaboutdoubts.com is a place that connects you with one-on-one or two-on-one Skype calls, or I don't know. Did I say Skype? I don't know what it is. Zoom. Yeah, boomer moment there. But anyway, Zoom calls where we will talk to people about their doubts. And so if you have questions about the reliability of the Gospels, Jonathan will put you in touch with somebody who has some expertise in talking about the reliability of the Gospels, or himself, because he has some expertise there. If you have questions about, like, say, divine hiddenness or the problem of evil, there are like people in philosophy departments like Tim McGrew or Joe Gruheis or others who are experts in these particular areas. And so he's basically got a whole panel of experts from all kinds of disciplines that he can get you in touch with. And what Jonathan and I did the last time is we just kind of wanted to give people like a public taste of what that's like. And so people could come up, join the stream, ask questions. I think it went really, really well. And so Than is going to be joining me. Than is kind of more of a generalist. So basically almost everything is on the table. We're not going to ask your answer. If we don't know the answer, we're just going to flat out tell you we don't know the answer.
Yeah.
But if you have doubts about Christianity, next Saturday, join the stream, and we will answer your questions and all of that good stuff. You do not have to come up, show your face on screen if you don't want to. You just have to kind of wave in the background before we let you up, so we know that you're not a troll. And then we would be glad to talk to you. And so that will be next week at noon. And then I'm going to keep doing that. Hopefully getting more guests. I've already reached out to some pretty big names, like even Wes Huff at some point has agreed to join. So
nice.
that will be pretty cool.
I want to get in on that one with him.
Yeah. So maybe we'll talk about people's doubts about, textual criticism and different things like that. So it should be good. It's something I want to do with this channel, is to serve you guys more directly. And so anyway, enough about that, but y'all get the idea. And so unless there's any questions, and I'm not seeing anything really in the chat, I'm looking for super chats. I'm just going to prioritize those because they're way easier to see. We will probably hop off, but I hope that you guys found this helpful. Overall, Than, how would you rate the experience? Like, what would you say with Jubilee? Would you recommend it if they ever did it again to somebody else?
I would go back.
Would you?
Yeah, I would definitely go back. I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way, but like I would definitely go back because um while it's not conducive to digging deep and like really extracting a lot of substance out, I'd still go back because, and this is like a double-edged sword. I'd go back because I need to bring eyes to the work that I do. Um, and that this opportunity did that. I also wish I could bring eyes to the work that I do, and then when people would look at the work that I do, they'd forget that I exist, so that way I can kind of just live in my little bubble without people from knowing me. But
Yeah,
um,
I hear you. That's why I do a
that's
lot
why
of
I'm saying it's a
faceless.
double-edged sword. But like I would do it again, and I got to meet some really cool people. There's a guy on there named Coley I really liked. Um, Elijah Lamb is another guy that I really liked that I met on there. He did really well on the war texts. Like he took about the same path that I did, and I was very happy with him. So yeah, I would do it again. I really would. But I would also, like, if I was given a choice between this format and then Jubilee being like, hey, let's have like a more long form format with less interruptions and pressure and speed, I would choose that one over the other one, obviously. But
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was definitely a mixed bag. There were some interesting people in there. I think that one girl that was like, Jesus appeared to me, and like
dude,
I've seen all these people getting out of wheelchairs, and I just thought like charismatic me was like
yeah,
kinda. I kind of
well,
like where you're going, but then but then I was like, lady, you got to bring some criteria and data and
yeah, I was
evidence
just gonna say,
versus just like this is my and I would never bring up a personal experience that I had like
yeah,
that like there's just I don't see the point of that, but like I was kind of like, oh my gosh, somebody's going to talk about miracles with Alex, but then she had like zero data points of like, here's some medical records, here's some stuff, it was just kind of like you just
dude,
sound like somebody who's watched like a few too many Todd White videos, and it
yeah.
was just
I was
so
I actually talked to her after the fact. Her name is Alexi, I think.
yeah.
And I actually told her, I'm like, it wasn't philosophically put together very well, but I told her, I'm like, I would endorse the argument you gave because it was on the resurrection prompt, right? And she
Right.
literally said, like, if Jesus is alive, how do you
Yeah.
if Jesus is dead, how do you explain all these things,
Right.
right? Like if she would have just had a little bit more like philosophical like rigor in there, I think it would have been a good argument because I would endorse that argument. I use that same type of argument. So
Yeah. Yeah. Like bring a case, bring a couple case studies, bring Gunderson, bring Van Natta,
yeah,
bring some of the Lord's miracles even. A lot of those have been tested with a really strict criteria. So I was like excited to see it in one sense, but then I was just like, oh man, that was also very painful on in the other sense. It was just
yeah,
like her heart's right. You could tell her heart's right, but it's just like um like she needs the case studies. So Alexi, if you're out there, um
she has
yeah,
my contact. So yeah,
yeah,
if you're out there and you're listening, man, like I'm more than happy to help you put that stuff together.
we got the case studies for you. So all right. Well, I thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to cut it here. So hopefully this was instructive. And again, be back 12 o'clock Central Time. Than and I will be talking about your doubts, doing live calls. And so we will see you then.
This is awkward. Eric, did you mean to do this? Okay. I'm assuming Eric wanted to end the stream instead of leaving. So just pretend I'm Eric. Thanks for coming.
Whoa. Okay.
I think you left instead of ending the stream. Do you want me to end the stream?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, man. Just boomer moments. End stream.